Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight Latino Voices. I'm Joanna Hernandez. On the show tonight, a Chicago public health official on what's being done to curb the rise in measles cases. Chicago police are pulling over Black and Latino drivers in traffic stops at higher rates, according to a new report.
Oh my gosh!
The solar eclipse is just a few days away. Whether traveling or staying local, we share what you need to know.
When Jason started, painting these out, I was like, man, these actually come to life now.
And a Venezuelan artist captures his journey to America. And now to some of today's top stories. With the Democratic National Convention just 4 months away, the city is ramping up security training. City officials and members of the Secret Service gathered at Soldier Field today to conduct a series of security training sessions ahead of the convention. The DNC is set to take place at the United Center in McCormick Place from August 19th through the 22nd. Today's training was held by the Federal Emergency Management Agency.
We look to plan for all various scenarios that could come up during this convention. Training such as today's will help us prepare for various hypothetical situations that could occur during the DNC.
Meanwhile, the Republican National Convention will take place in Milwaukee this July. Mayor Brandon Johnson is urging the Biden administration to grant work permits to not only arrivals, but also to the thousands of undocumented residents in Illinois. The mayor held a roundtable discussion earlier today at the Chicago Urban League, saying migration is an opportunity to grow economically. He says expanding work permits will address labor shortages and improve working conditions for undocumented workers.
We know that immigrant communities make Chicago vibrant, dynamic, and a strong city. I'm proud to support the Here to Work campaign. Congress really is required to lead in this moment. And we're going to continue to urge President Biden to use every tool that is at his disposal to support our newly arrivals and our undocumented residents.
A new study shows Promontory Point's historic limestone rocks are successfully protecting the shoreline from erosion. They just need to be repaired. The group Promontory Park Conservancy today released the results in an independent study it commissioned. The study says most of the limestone blocks are generally in good condition and less than 25% would need to be replaced. It goes on to say shifting of the blocks is due to the loss of underlying material which can be replaced. The findings are in contradiction with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, which claims the existing structures no longer protect against flooding and erosion and need to be replaced entirely. There's more on this on our website. Up next, what the city is doing to combat a spike in measles cases. That's right after this.
Chicago Tonight, Latino Voices, is made possible in part by the support of these donors.
Chicago has recorded 56 measles cases this year, accounting for over half of the cases across the country. That's according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, that also reported more than half of cases are in children under the age of 5. The Chicago Department of Public Health says they are fighting the spread through testing and vaccinations, particularly in the migrant shelter where the majority of cases are emerging. Joining us now with more is Dr. Brian Bora, the medical director for vaccine preventable diseases at the Chicago Department of Public Health. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Now, first question, what is the department's current action plan with the rise in these health concerns?
We have a multi-pronged action plan right now. I think the most visible part of our action plan is vaccinating. We today just crossed our threshold of vaccinating 6,000 people in the shelter system right now. So we have teams out there every day. We've had over 75 vaccine events since March 8th when this campaign started. There's a lot going on behind the scenes as well. Like you mentioned, we are testing folks, we are screening folks, we are making phone calls to expose people, and doing a lot of epidemiologic work behind the scenes.
Can you briefly explain what it looks like for someone who has the measles and how it spreads?
Sure. So measles is actually one of the most contagious diseases that we know about. Someone who has measles, they usually start with, some general viral symptoms like cough, cold, cough, like runny nose, red eyes. They can develop a fever that can get pretty high. And then after a couple days, they develop a rash, which usually starts in the head and moves down to the rest of the body.
I want to take a look at some numbers. The CDPH has reported 56 cases this year. That's contributed to the 97 cases we've seen in the U.S. Also, children under five make up over half of the cases. First, why is Chicago seeing so many more cases than the rest of the country?
It's something we are trying to understand ourselves. I think we had a unique situation with a lot of people in very close quarters. Anytime you have a congregate setting like that, you have a risk for a spread of any disease. And so, there was some bad luck. Measles somehow was introduced to this setting, and we have an outbreak now.
What makes children so vulnerable?
Children, anybody is really vulnerable to this disease. Children are particularly vulnerable to getting a severe disease. So we say, children under 5 are especially at high risk, and even those younger children are even at a higher risk of getting really sick.
And what can parents do? Obviously, there's a big concern at schools because of the way of how contagious it is. What can parents do?
I think the number one thing parents and everybody else can do right now is get vaccinated. Check your vaccine records. If you don't have records, ask your primary care doctor. If you still can't find records, you can get something that's called a titer, so you can check to see if you have immunity in your blood. And if it comes back negative, it's another opportunity to get yourself vaccinated.
I assume that's also a blood test?
It is a blood test, yes.
So if an adult like myself wants to make sure, I could go ahead and do that.
You can get
if I don't have records.
Correct. That's absolutely correct. Yep.
Now, the CDPH has said the outbreak is not linked to the migrant shelter, despite the majority coming from there. Can you explain why?
I think what that is trying to explain is that we don't exactly know how measles was introduced into this setting. Clearly we've had a lot of cases come out of that setting, but I think it's an open question about how measles came to be in that setting. We do have a high level of confidence that, we knew certainly that measles was in Chicago before this outbreak started.
Okay.
We had a case of Chicago in the community beforehand. We knew about a case in Indiana, just over the border, that had some exposures in the city too. So we think that they are somehow linked to one of those two cases or another, case that we're not sure about, but we're still investigating those details.
And because you said it is contagious, this is a Pilsen shelter, so everyone is in one space.
Exactly. So a lot of exposed people in that shelter, and even one case of measles, we respond to very quickly and with a lot of resources. You can imagine what's going on behind the scenes with so many cases.
Of course. And you said 6,000 migrants have been vaccinated. Has that all been at the Pilsen shelter, or it's spread out at different shelters?
All through the shelter system.
Okay, and what does that signal to you about the cases outside of the shelter, specifically talking about the Pilsen shelter?
Well, we focused first on the shelter where we knew that there were cases and we knew that there were transmission. And we were able to vaccinate, as many people as possible, even just in 3 days. So the second step of our vaccine campaign was to go into the shelters where we thought there might be a risk of spread. And so I think we were able to get ahead of the virus in that way, and we really have targeted, most of the shelters housing these new arrivals in Chicago, and we think have put a good dent into this outbreak.
And the vaccine, has it just been children, also asylum seekers being vaccinated as well?
Anybody in the shelter who didn't have evidence of immunity, we offered a vaccine to.
And what is your opinion? Do you think there should be a requirement for asylum seekers to receive immunizations?
I think, generally speaking, anybody in the community, to participate in society, I think it's always a good idea to be vaccinated. It's not only a protection for yourself, it's a protection for your loved ones, for your neighbors, and for the general Chicago community.
And now I want to switch the subject to talk about tuberculosis. There's confirmed cases at also some of the shelters. What can you tell us about this?
That's not part of my day-to-day work at CDPH, but I will say that unlike measles, where we go years and years without seeing a single case of measles, tuberculosis, we on average see somewhere between 100 and 150 cases in Chicago a year. I don't believe there's been any documented transmission within the shelter of tuberculosis right now. We have a team working on it, and I'd be happy to put you in touch with them.
Okay, thank you. Do you think that people should be extremely concerned in Chicago right now?
About measles?
Yes, about measles.
I think everyone can be confident that this, we know that cases are going down right now. Testing is going down right now. So we think we've done, our job to at least pause or slow down this outbreak. We know that it is somewhat contained within, there hasn't been much documented spread within the wider community right now in Chicago. That said, like I mentioned before, I think this is the perfect opportunity to make sure that you're vaccinated, make sure you have those records. If you're not sure, talk to a doctor.
Well, thank you for all that information.
Thank you, Joanna.
Up next, a new report finds Chicago police are pulling over drivers of color at higher rates. Heather Sharon has a story right after this. Black and Latino drivers are being pulled over at higher rates by Chicago police. That's according to a new report released today by the nonprofit advocacy and research organization Impact for Equity that has helped lead the push to reform Chicago Police Department. Reporter Heather Sharon joins us now with the latest. Heather, let's get right to it. Tell us how many traffic stops Chicago police officers made in 2023 and why.
So in 2023, Chicago police made more than 530,000 traffic stops. And then that's 5% more in 2022 and 40% more than in 2021. The vast majority of those stops, nearly 80%, were caused by non-moving violations. So somebody had a broken taillight or an expired license plate registration. In only 2.2% of those stops did police make an arrest. And in less than 0.5% of those stops did they recover a gun, leading to this report's conclusion that these stops aren't making Chicagoans any safer.
And this report showed that more than 80% of drivers stopped by Chicago police in 2023 were Black or Latino. Is that evidence that officers are stopping Chicagoans because of their race?
So Impact for Equity says they are convinced that there's no other possible explanation other than racial discrimination for this to be so out of whack with Chicago's population, which, as you know, is 1/3 Black, 1/3 Latino, and 1/3 white. Just less than 14% of all traffic stops in Chicago pull over white drivers. And this group says that the Chicago police needs to address this disparity immediately.
And the leaders of the group behind this report were hopeful Superintendent Larry Snelling would change the way CPD uses traffic stops. Has he?
So there's no evidence that it has changed significantly. In the last 3 months of 2023, which was under Larry Snelling's leadership, Chicago police made more than 119,000 traffic stops, and about the same percentage of Black and Latino drivers being pulled over. Now, I reached out to the Chicago Police Department to ask the superintendent to respond to these figures. I didn't hear back.
And this is the latest in a series of reports looking at the way Chicago police officers stop Chicagoans while driving and on foot. What's next, and what stood out to you the most?
Well, Impact for Equity is now asking the city's new police oversight board, the Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability, to essentially change the policy that governs when Chicago police officers are allowed to stop cars. They want a ban on stops designed to develop evidence of other crimes. They also want officers to require an independent legal standard before asking to search somebody's car. And they also want a ban on stops for non-sort of threatening issues, sort of like a license plate registration issue or a broken taillight that doesn't pose a hazard. The president of that board, Anthony Driver, said today he was interested in sort of digging into this issue and getting the policy right, he said.
Well, thank you, Heather, for the report. That's pretty interesting.
Thanks, Joanna.
And you can read the full report and Heather's story on our website. It's all at WTTW.com/news.
Chicago Tonight's coverage of public safety is supported by the Su Ling Jin Charitable Foundation Initiative for reducing violence in Chicago.
Whether you're staying local or traveling to the path of totality, Monday's total solar eclipse is the must-see astronomical event of the year. Joining us now with a breakdown of what you need to know to prepare for it are Joe Guzman, founder and CEO of Chicago Astronomer and NASA Ambassador, and Lou Mayo, a NASA scientist and astronomy professor at Marymount University. Thank you both for joining us. Lou, I want to go straight to you. I want to go back to 2017. You were at Southern Illinois University for the last total solar eclipse in Carbondale, and that's where you will be able to see the total path of totality. Can you take me back to that time and why you're so excited to do that again?
Oh, sure. I was with a NASA group back then out of NASA Goddard Space Flight Center, and we had 3 years to prepare educational materials and programming and so on for this 2017 eclipse. We partnered with Southern Illinois University, who had the infrastructure and the talent to help pull this live event off. And we also had NASA Edge to stream the event all over the country, in fact, all over the world. This was one of the most exciting programs that I think we've ever done. And we reached hundreds of millions of people, and by some estimates, over 1 billion people around the world.
And you're back at it again this year. Can you tell me a little bit about the events on campus and any tips to individuals who are planning to travel there?
Sure. So SIU have a number of events that are planned. They have their stadium, which I understand is essentially booked. It's filled, which is something like 40,000 people. There will be live events at the stadium. We will have a group of about 100 telescopes lined up along the path of totality. This is about a 150-mile wide swath of real estate from the west coast of Mexico all the way up through Maine and into Canada. And so we will have pictures, images, and videos of the eclipse in various frequencies of light, which will make the sun look, different throughout the event. And we'll have SIU will be broadcasting live for the entire probably 4 hours, 2 hours plus and minus the eclipse.
It's so interesting. It just shows how excited people are for this event. And Joe, going to you, do you have any plans for travel? Where are you planning to see this eclipse?
I will have a car load with telescopes, cameras, gear, and I'll be west of the Mississippi for the 100% totality event.
That's so cool. So you actually brought us some gadgets here. It's so cool, okay? This table's filled with gadgets. Tell me some ways that people can protect their eyes. We see the glasses, we see some telescopes. Break it down for me.
And astronomy is cool. We want you to be protected when you observe this event. We want to retain your eyesight. The simplest thing you can do is get your cardboard solar filters here. But be careful. There should be an ISO number and an address on where they were manufactured. There are a lot of counterfeits out there right now. And when you get those counterfeits, it may allow ultraviolet light or infrared light and damage your eyes. So be very careful on these.
These are made in Germany.
Made in Germany, yes.
And how about these?
Tell
me about these.
These are binoculars fitted with solar filters, specifically to observe the sun. I used these in 2017. Man, it brings in such a fantastic view of the sun. Do not use binoculars without filters. Immediate damage. So let's not do that. Next is a telescope. That's the next step up. This is a nice tabletop telescope. With this type of equipment, fantastic view. It'll connect you with the sun, the moon, and the earth all in a line, so basking in the glory. But if you notice, it has a filter.
It also has a filter.
You gotta have a filter on there. And with this, 100% safe. But for those with telescopes, always remove the finder, because this is not filtered. And you don't want people accidentally looking into that.
And you have the camera here as well?
I have a camera as well. We got to protect your
And that's
expensive.
A must.
It's a must.
Everything needs to have a filter.
Well, yeah, except at 100% totality, where in that path that this gentleman was describing earlier. If you aim your cameras at the sun without a filter, you're going to burn out your sensors, and we don't want that. There's a lot of expensive equipment going on, and this just pops on and off. And so in Chicago, during the partial eclipse, this always must remain on. Now, take photos, take videos of your families.
Phone?
You can use your phone. people want to take photographs of the eclipse. Simple solution. Tape your
I love that.
glasses on to the camera of your cell
Okay,
phone.
that's pretty cool.
Perfectly safe. You can do video, you can do pictures, and take as many as you want because these are your photographs of the event.
That's pretty awesome. And Lou, I want to ask you a question. What should consumers look for if they're still trying to purchase a pair of solar glasses?
Well, it turns out that there are still a number of resources to purchase solar glasses through Amazon or eBay or other online groups. You might have to pay a little more to get them to you in time. And as was just mentioned, you want to look for the ISO 12312-2. Is that right? ISO
Is it
standard.
right, Joe? I think he's testing you. Is it right? Is it
It's
right?
They're all listed right there.
I love that you knew
some
that.
numbers that make sure that the light from infrared, visible, and ultraviolet is at a safe level for your eyes.
And of course, the weather plays a big part. Guzman, how's the weather going to look like in Chicago?
Well,
Good news or bad news?
Extended forecast for Chicago is 60 degrees, well, that's good. And maybe we'll have some partly cloudy skies. And with that, you'll be able to see the partial eclipse just fine.
And tell me why you're so passionate about this.
We are part of the universe. We can take a seat right here and watch the moon, the sun, the earth, and me all in alignment chasing that shadow. And we are in a golden era right now where the moon is just the right size. A few million years ago, the moon was huge in our skies. A few million years from now, the moon will be too far away. It's going away from the Earth an inch a year. So right now is the perfect opportunity.
Are people going to be able to see it in Chicago? I know I'm going to be by the planetarium. Will people be able to see a partial?
94%.
Okay.
And even with that, those in the know will notice a slight, ever so slight dimming. But really, the sun's energy is so intense that it will just look like a cloudy day for you. But don't forget these.
These glasses, should we put them on? The glasses here that you can't see anything, but you'll be able to see the eclipse.
You will be able to see it.
And Lou, last question to you. Let's talk. This doesn't only affect humans. Let's talk about the animals. Can you just quickly tell me about what do animals experience? I was researching some things, and I think I read something about giraffes hopping around or skipping. That's.
I don't know about giraffes, but and NASA has actually looked into this. Not only animals, but certain plants that respond to daylight cycles are affected by this eclipse. This is a fairly long eclipse, as eclipses go. If you're in the path of totality, over 4 minutes of totality. And so during that time, animals think that it's nighttime. Cows return to the barn, squirrels nest, crickets stop chirping, this kind of thing. And then, of course, it only lasts for 4 minutes, and then they recover. But it's really an amazing event for people and animals.
Well, thank you so much. That's all the time we have. One last word, Joe. One word to describe this experience.
Life-changing. You got to go. You got to observe this. If you're in Chicago or if you're in somewhere else on the path.
I think you appreciate it. Thank you to both of you. And for more information on local events happening around the eclipse, visit our website at WTTW.com/news. Up next, a Venezuelan migrant captures his journey to America through art. Stay with us.
Coverage of science and technology on Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Joel M. Friedman, president of the Alvin H. Baum Family Fund.
Community members have played a significant role in helping asylum seekers feel at home. Last year, a pastor at a local church in Belmont-Cragen opened the doors of his congregation to house a group of migrants that were sleeping at a police station. One of the men has now created a series of paintings describing his journey to America.
Mi exhibición la pensé en una frase que uno dice cuando ya no hay más opciones, cuando ya tú ves que ya la situación te está ahogando, que tú miras para los lados y dices, ¿ahora qué voy a hacer? Entonces no hay más que otra que irse. Entonces me tengo que ir.
I had images when people would tell me these stories, and they're just made up images in my mind. But when Jason started, painting these out, I was like, man, these actually come to life now.
Este cuadro es soledad. Muchas de las experiencias que hubo en la selva fueron ver niños también en condiciones bastante deplorables, estaban sucios y muchas veces solos. Pero La idea también de mis cuadros es que muchos de los que pasamos por esta travesía experimentamos también esos sentimientos. Entonces, por eso, claro, con lo que más conectamos es con un niño. Y dentro de cada uno de nosotros también hay un niño. Entonces, quise como que enfocarme en esa parte cuando plasmé esta pintura.
Jason has been here since August. I think it was pretty quickly when I started seeing it because he started doing some sketches, just random things, projects that he was already given. And, you know, obviously we praised him for it. We were really excited for him.
Es un poquito contradictorio, pero quise dar la luz del tren, pero quise que darle un enfoque diferente a la pintura. Detrás de nosotros tenemos muchos pensamientos negativos, por supuesto, por todas las experiencias por las que pasamos. Pero siempre delante de nosotros va a haber una luz que nos va a guiar, que nos va a dar la esperanza. Por eso este cuadro yo le puse luz de esperanza. Porque no todo lo que pasamos siempre fue algo negativo. También hubo personas que nos ayudaron, muchas personas que nos tendieron la mano, muchas personas que nos dieron un plato de comida, muchas personas que nos dieron hasta para un pasaje.
Very talented. The art exhibit will take place at Starting Point Community Church in Belmont Cragen this weekend. It's a free event on Friday and Saturday where guests can learn more about the artist's journey and others staying at the church. We have more information about this event on our website. And that's our show tonight. Join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 7 for the Weekend Review. Now, from all of us here at Chicago Tonight Latino Voices, I'm Joanna Hernandez. Stay healthy, stay safe. Buenas noches.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that is proud to be a multilingual law firm that provides translators for a variety of languages.